Sure. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Ellie King. I'm here with Bao Diango of cPALSs. He is the chair of our festivals committee, also our secretary. And so we're just here to share a little bit about Bao's heart behind the festivals and to learn a little bit more about the upcoming Lunar New Year. And Bao, we've had a lot of conversations about um, being able to share with the community where your heart's at, where you want to see the festivals taken, and what it means to you to have that platform. And so I had the privilege of working with you this year, right? The past that festival. One of the things that resonated with me a lot was your heart behind wanting to carry traditions and to carry um, your heritage to your baby girl. And so I know that that's one of the biggest things. And I know that's important because that seemed to be the theme throughout the event. You know, people were asking, what is Lunar New Year? So I think this is the perfect way for us to be able to have a heart to heart and have you break down, what Lunar New Year is um, to you and why it was so important for you to carry this into our community here in Sacramento.
All right, yeah, thank you for introducing me. And like you mentioned, we have worked together at this past festival, this in February of this year. So thank you for that. And just for the audience, like Ellie is also our vice president for cPALS, and so we are co-board members and having worked together at for the festival. But I definitely want to I guess start from the beginning, just for audience members who are not familiar with the festival and its history and its purpose. So the festival is the Lunar New Year Tet Festival, and it's been around for many years, organized by Vietnamese community. Uh, it used to be hosted by the Vietnamese American Community of Sacramento. So that's an actual organization, VACOS, or sometimes I like to say it as VACOS. So that organization's been around forever. I don't know when it was established, probably I would say in the 1980s. And then um, uh, more recently, I would say maybe 10 years ago, there was a new organization called the Greater Sacramento Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce. So it's basically a chamber of commerce for the Vietnamese community, and they started to take the helm to help out the VACOS, right? And then that organization rebranded. It split off a nonprofit arm as the Greater Sacramento Vietnamese Foundation. Man, I, that's too many organizations to remember. But that nonprofit arm also rebranded and became cPALS, Community Partners Advocate of Little Saigon, Sacramento. So that's the organization that we're part of right now, is that nonprofit arm that splintered off of the chamber. So the three organizations work very closely with one another. So VACOS, cPALS, and then the chamber renamed itself to NorCal Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce. So the three organizations work very closely with one another in order to host the festival. And cPALS took the lead for this year, right? I would say, yeah, for the first time, it took the lead for this year. Um, and part of the reason is that, we're working in essentially nonprofit space. And when it comes to leadership, people come and go, right? So stability, what I've noticed is stability within the nonprofit organizations has been a challenge. And so one year, one organization may be going through leadership transition. And so another organization like cPALS would step up. So that is why cPALS has stepped up for 2026. Um, but even taking a step back, like what is Lunar New Year? Um, so Lunar New Year and that's known in the in English term, but if we focus back to the Vietnamese community, the festival is called, the holiday is called Tet, right? And that is, I would say, the most important holiday in the Vietnamese tradition. In the Chinese culture, uh, Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year, I should say, is arguably also the most important holiday for them. Vietnam and China being adjacent countries also share a lot of cultural overlap. So for both our cultures, Lunar New Year is the most important holiday. So what does it celebrate? Well, it's the coming of spring, right? So just like in Western societies that celebrate New Year's, New Year's Day, that's the coming of the new year, right? So from on January 1st. But for Chinese and Vietnamese cultures, we're welcoming spring. And traditionally, that welcoming of spring is tied to the agriculture, right? So we want to celebrate uh, hope for an abundant year. So we have to start off with a big bang, clear out all the bad luck, all the past uh, negative vibes, right? 'Cause we usually traditions would include like sweeping the house, making amends with all your colleagues, friends, neighbors, right? If there's anything that hasn't been resolved, resolve it before the new year begins, right? So it's really about fresh beginnings, right? That is what the tradition is about. And so
Yeah.
it's, you were gonna say something? Yeah, so it's been going on for
No, I
thousands of
thank you for
years.
that.
Sorry, there seems to be a delay in the Zoom. Anyways, I'll just
There
continue.
is you yeah.
I'll continue. So, if, yeah, so it's been going on for thousands of years. And so, that tradition carried over across the seas to America. And wherever there is a Chinese culture, Vietnamese community, or Chinese community, you will find that celebration. Um, for example, in San Francisco, a celebration's been there since the late 1800s, I think 1880s, I would say, when was the first year that there was a Chinese New Year festival in America, in San Francisco. So that's worth noting. And then the Vietnamese refugees, when they came over after the Vietnam War, they brought that tradition as well, in the 1980s. So this festival, yeah, is being brought over, and obviously it has to adapt to uh, thrive in America. But in some ways, it's also kind of an anchor for the community because for many, especially for Vietnamese refugees, when they first came over to America and tried to make their livelihood, the lunar the Vietnamese New Year or that festival was a way for them to feel anchored, right? Because they've lost their home, they fled the country. So a lot of refugees missed home, or Vietnam was their home, right? And many of them thought that they were only going to be here temporarily. So that was a way to kind of um, stay connected to that heritage. Oh, did you yep. So so yeah, it's been a staple for the refugees, the Vietnamese refugees, and we want to honor and continue that tradition.
And so this upcoming year, we also wanted to make sure that um, we were sensitive to families and that we had more family oriented um, commitments. And what do you plan to carry into this next year with families in mind?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think mm, what motivates me is that so what happened with 2024 to 2026. So 2024 was the first year that we moved the festival from Stockton Boulevard to Elk Grove Park, right? And the reason for that, and I'm only been involved with the festival last year, so this is just my knowledge and understanding from talking to predecessors. But the reason for moving to Elk Grove Park was that, well, two reasons. One was that the center of gravity for the Vietnamese community is actually shifting. There are more Vietnamese Americans in Elk Grove now than the rest of Sacramento. Maybe. I based on my latest research, I think it's there are more Vietnamese Americans in Elk Grove than Sacramento now. So that is a very important development. But number two is also that the park is just more appealing in terms of that vibe, right? And I think that the leadership has always been interested in trying to make this a very family-friendly festival. Um, Now, 2025, we had a rainstorm, and so that was basically a wash. Quite literally, that we had about 20% of 2024's attendance numbers coming out, and it was really heavy rain that whole weekend. So the fact that anyone came out at all uh was really a testament to the resilience. A lot of it were the performers, members of the Vietnamese community, and then passerbys who tried to sneak out during the calm moments of the thunderstorm. So we're thankful for that, but I don't know if we could survive something like that again so soon. But I talked to a lot of people who've been to festivals in the past, and they said that um, the formula that used to work 10 years ago doesn't quite fit today. And what I mean by that is, um, 10 years ago, the festival was really aiming towards, I would say, Gen X, you know, and their families. Um, and they're into traditional Vietnamese music, and they have this kind of sense of like how things were celebrated growing up. But now it's the millennials generation's turn. And I talk to millennials and their expectations are different. For example, many of my peers have a great time at Disneyland. So their expectation is higher. The bar is raised in terms of what they're looking for in terms of entertainment, experiences for their children is different. So when I say and when we talk about gearing the festival towards family, that's always been true. It's always been family oriented. The difference now is that uh we have to be more mindful about millennial generation and their kids, um, in addition to Gen X and their kids, right? And my peers, their tastes are different. Um, like I just mentioned, like we have to uh, cater around the fact that most of my peers are comfortably bilingual. Like they could speak English and Vietnamese very comfortably, right? And so they have access to a lot of entertainment in the mainstream, like Disney, um, anything that you would watch in the mainstream, like Super Bowl, for example. Like they're into to sports. So that's something I'm mindful about bringing in this year is like is not just saying that we're family-oriented festival, but really understanding like, okay, parents, Gen Alpha kids, what are you into? Because if you ask what Gen Alpha is into, and I talked to them, they said they're into, mo the most recent trend is K-pop demon hunters, right? Which may, if we brought that into our festival, people, I can imagine people
Right.
saying, well, that's not Vietnamese culture. But I think the strategy is really bringing something that that generation can identify with, that they get excited about. And once they're here at the festival, then you can introduce them into interesting aspects of the Vietnamese culture. It doesn't work if all you do is promote the Vietnamese culture and it's alien to the kids, right? Um, so that's something I've observed as kind of changing times is just what the youth are into, what they've grown up to. It's different than, my parents' generation.
Right. And so what I heard a lot, even through like the back end plannings, is to be intentional and to be mindful of all the age brackets while still preserving like the cultural heritage. And you said something earlier about Disneyland. And so Disneyland has a lot of different themed areas. And one of the things that has stood out in the recent plannings for 2027 is how the intention is to make this story filled with the kids theater, just to promote the soul torrent. What would you share with families as far as preparation, or what are they to expect with the soul torrent and the Disneyland themed idea, if you will, for 2027?
Yeah, yeah. So, the challenge has been how do we bring that Disneyland element to our festival without violating intellectual property? Um, so I mean, I still love the idea of themed villages. Like I remember going to Disney World and going to the Epcot Center, and they have an area for Italy, an area for Germany and France, an area for Japan, right? And China. So there was a different culture represented at Epcot Center, and I loved it. Um, it gave me exposure to different cultures, but it was also organized in a way where when you were in the Japan area, everything that was Japanese was related, and so you can you can immerse yourself and really take in that culture, right? Instead of as opposed to going to a festival and just being bombarded with a bunch of random things and trying to make sense of everything, right? Because I go to night markets, I go to other festivals who proclaim themselves as multicultural festivals, and that's fine, except the problem is that, what does the lion dance have to do with uh Mexican folklorical dancers, right? Um, I think there has to be a sense of explanation, storytelling about how different expressions of culture are related. Like if you see a Hawaiian uh, hula dancers, what are they conveying through their dance, right? And how does it connect to nature? How does it connect to food? How does it connect to social relationships, right? It's best done when you're in an environment where you step into Hawaiian culture world, right? And you get to learn about Hawaiian culture rather than jumbling everything up and hoping that people get it. It's really hard when you just jumble everything up. So I want to take the idea from Disney World and kind of create those themed villages, right? And um and also for age brackets. So for children, especially, you know, there's a different experience when you're dealing with toddlers versus young kids like in their uh age 10 to teens, right? Very different experience and expectation. Like you would never bring your teenager to a kids village. They would never be caught dead in it, right? And then toddlers, they're very simple in terms of like pleasing them. Like you can give them toy blocks, kiddie rides, right? They're very easy to please and have fun. But when it comes to teens, their bar is raised. In fact, my understanding of teens nowadays is that they would prefer to kind of roam on their own, apart from their family. Just give them some space to roam on their own with other teens. Um, so this is the kind of like thinking that I want to bring to the festival is how do we intentionally design the festival in a way that works for everyone, right? It works for the family who have young kids. It works for the teens who maybe they need some space apart from their family, but reconvene later. Um, or uh, Zoomers who are in their early or mid 20s, right? So every age bracket has a need and a way of preferring to experience a festival. So I'm not saying we're gonna solve that right away for 2027, but the intentionality is there, right? So we will start introducing themed villages, more intentional product design or experience design into our festival starting in 2027. And then over the years, just get better at it and iterate. Um, but you mentioned Soul Torrent. So for the audience who don't know what Soul Torrent is, so um, the thing about Disneyland, Disney World is that it's a place of magic, right? It's a place where children are allowed to have use their imagination and to just step into a world, a magical world, right? Whether it's there's Harry Potter, which is not Disney, but it's Universal Studios. There's Harry Potter, um, or you step into Disneyland and you're talking to Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Donald Duck, right? Um, so so I thought about, well, how can we bring that to Lunar New Year, right? What is the magical element? And there's already a sense of that. Like there's the lion dance, right? So not many people know this, but what is the purpose of the lion dance? The purpose of the lion dance is to ward off bad spirits, right? The you have the drums that creates that booming sound that scares away bad spirits, right? But you also have the lions who they chase away bad spirits and they bless the space, right? So so that opens up the realm of spirits, right? They're spirits, but I think I think for a lot of non-Asian people, they don't know what that looks like, right? They just know like, okay, bad spirits, but what does that look like? Nope, and there isn't a lot of art for that our community like renders for them to look at and appreciate. Okay, this is what bad spirits look like. This is what lion dance does in order to ward them off. And I want to start introducing that is visualization to a world of spirits, um, which I have to be very sensitive around because I think there are still people who take it very seriously, right? They don't want to invite bad spirits to the festival. So I'm trying to find that balance of wanting to show people our world, our culture, in a very visual way because a lot of kids they're very receptive to that, right? Think about why K-pop Demon Hunters is so successful because it's a show about demons, right? Which is,
Yes.
obviously tied to K-pop in a fun way, but there's elements within the Chinese culture, the Vietnamese culture that also um is rich. It's such a rich, vibrant world, and it's so underutilized, undertapped. Um, so I want to bring more of that element of the spirit world, but I still have to be very careful because there are people who, still treats the interaction with spirits very seriously, so I don't want to necessarily offend them. So,
Right.
2027, I would say, is the beginning of the intention, but it will take time to figure out what is the most viable path where, on the one hand, young people, non-Asian people get to experience and understand the spirit world. And then, for the very traditional Vietnamese, Chinese, that we're not making fun of that culture. Because this is not about making fun of culture. This is about making it accessible and appealing so that especially the youth really embraces that culture. Because like I think wouldn't you say there's something similar in terms of that connection to spirits through was it de la Muerte?
Yeah, they are muertos. Yes. So I really like the intention behind it because even through the 2026, we were able to bring, opening the ceremony with the lion dancers, with the prayers, the intentionality of carrying on traditions while still holding on to um, the sensitivity that there are other age brackets. And so I think that having this interactive introduction for the community to embrace not just the Vietnamese culture in like a generic form. It's more interactive, right? It's not just, you went to the lion dance and then you, like you said earlier, you went to go eat and it was just a cluster of things and you weren't able to take on full experience. So I really appreciate the interactive approach and the intentionality to carry the sensitivity of honoring, your culture and the Vietnamese culture so that we're not offensive, but we're also extending the invitation for those that aren't Vietnamese and don't understand the culture or its richness. But I would even go a step further where a lot of our youth, Vietnamese or otherwise, don't really know their history and their roots and their culture. And I think this is a very way to tie in the teenager to the toddler to the couples and just bring them all together. And I'll even go further as individuals that are in the planning of the festivals. We don't often get to share time with our families, but this in itself would also allow us a connection with our families and to be able to bring cultural richness to the community that they can choose to interact with, while also understanding, the East meets West and all the food that comes along with that. And I think, to answer your question, Dia de los Muertos is honored in the same way. So your Lunar New Year, that festival is my Dia de los Muertos, and it is a sensitive space to talk about, spirits and demons or things like that in any culture, I think, and even, in the belief system. So it's really great that you have that intentionality, that sensitivity, that creativity to bring culture to life with the idea that it would impact us differently if we experienced it versus tasted it through a meal or watched it through a general performance. So I think that's really culturally vibrant and definitely something that Elk Grove will enjoy. It's also on planned on what weekends?
So yeah, for 2027, we're going to have it on February 13, 14, which is gonna be Valentine's Day on Sunday, yes, but also Super Bowl Sunday. So, so that is
That's
worth
right.
noting because I think for a lot of people, they were very scared. Oh, that if we hold it on Super Bowl weekend, we're gonna see a decrease in attendance. And that would be true if you're just trying to hold a Lunar New Year festival, right? But as someone who understands marketing, product design, I asked the question, well, why don't we have a Lunar New Year tailgate and a watch party, right? So so we're looking and exploring into having a tailgate and then the big screen to watch the Super Bowl. That's my hope because I know there's a lot of Asians who are into sports, especially football. Um, a lot of them were into the World Cup, right? So if they're into World Cup, chances are they're also into Super Bowl. I know
Oh
a lot
yeah.
of Asians who are into that. So it just makes me wonder, like, the thing about tradition and culture is that it's not just the festival is not just to bring in people to observe tradition, right? The festival is to bring in the community. And the thing about community is that community tastes shift and change, and we have to respond to that, right? So since I know there's a lot of Asians in the community who are into sports, I thought, why not lean into that? So for Sunday, we definitely want to like think about how we can create a tailgate. For example, uh, maybe we can bring in a lot of crawfish, right? Because there's such a thing as Asian Cajun food, and part of that is having a seafood boil like crabs and crawfish. So imagine like people bringing in like sacks and sacks of crawfish to eat at while they're watching the Super Bowl. I mean, what do you think? Like that would be kind of cool to do as a community.
I know, that sounds like a good idea. Definitely. And I think there's couples too, that will enjoy having that planification already set for them. I know that not everybody with today's economy can make the Super Bowl at present, or attend the game physically. But I think this is really a great way too to like have that camaraderie with the community, have that um, space, and I'm sure there's going to be couples that one spouse doesn't lean toward the football maybe, but there are so many different things that are planned out. We have the interactives, the theater, the children's spaces. The other thing we were talking about was the Obon, right? We were replacing last year, this present year, we had a car show.
Mm,
And though that was a really exciting East meets West merge, um, we've been discussing replacing the car show or excuse me, the car parade with a walking circle.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that the community would be really excited to hear your thought process on why the transition, why the Obon style loop at the pavilion versus
Yeah.
the car parade.
Um, so so in 2026, what we did was we upgraded the procession to be more parade-like. Um, because in 2024, it was more of an afterthought. It wasn't really well designed to be a parade. But in 2026, when we invited Louisiana Sue to help out, she said this needs to be a proper parade. So we made it front and center. We brought it from the morning into early afternoon. That was great. We did introduce cars to drive along the route. And the thing we learned was that we're not prepared for that because we were kind of short-staffed, and to run a parade and not have to worry about major security risks and people getting injured, we need to beef up our staff. And so that's just the reality. We just need more people involved in helping out.
More
And
conversation. A
yeah.
great piece right now to just ask for volunteers is it's volunteer led, and the community is welcome to volunteer so that we can have these added things. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. Not only is it volunteer led, it's free admission. I mean, we do charge for parking just to recoup some of the costs, but we try to make this accessible to everybody. So it's free, it's also free admission. So obviously that means like we're working on very tight
Yeah.
budgets. But yeah, with a parade, like we have to spend a lot more money on security and safety. And that's just not feasible at the moment. So what I'm proposing is that, temporarily we scale back a bit, something that we can manage, which is a procession. And last month I was really inspired by Oban, the Japanese Buddhist tradition. And for a lot of Oban festivals, they kind of walk in, or they dance in a circle. And so I thought, well, there we have a circle in the park. It's that roundabout in front of the pavilion building, So I thought, why don't we convert
Yeah.
our parade into a circular procession? And to tie it into the Soul Torrent theme, um, if line dances are about scaring away bad spirits, then why don't we use this procession, the circular procession, as a way to build positive energy, build positive community energy, right? So that's kind of how I'm trying to tie it into the spirit realm, is we're building this positive energy. And at the end of the day, it is very much about inviting community groups and for them to kind of showcase, like, what does it mean to build that positive energy, right? What does it look like? Because for every culture, it's uniquely different and it's wonderfully different. And I'd like to showcase that diversity, you know?
Definitely. So, and I think that that's also like a live illustration, right? Of like locking arms and having that Oban circle and that community knit tightness and getting to know your neighbor and serving your neighbor. And it really just brings a lot because, we are also working on a resource hub. But as we're kind of coming to um, our next questions, I was curious. You've been talking about a lot of intentionality, a lot of family involvement. Festivals have food and needs for volunteers. What are we deliberately not building?
What are we
So we're talking
not?
about we're building
Okay.
on.
Not building. Um, that's like a very open-ended question. I'm trying to figure out like how to answer that. Because on the one hand, Sunday, yes, Sunday will be like a more tailgate oriented. Um, oh, here's a very good answer. So I think over the long term, because we are trying to um, make it accessible via free admission, that
Yeah,
decision really I would say caps, or ceilings what the festival could be, right? And I don't think we would be something like a free music concert, right?
right.
Like with headliners, with really big headliners. I don't think we had that kind of resources. That there is an example in San Francisco called the Stearns Grove Festival, which is essentially free admission, music concert with major headliners, right? But they're able to get a lot of grants, um and they what they do is they limit the number of attendants, right? So I don't
Yeah,
think we'll be like that. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because what that means is that, okay, if we cannot raise a lot of funds to attract major headliners, then the entertainment is not so much the headliners, the entertainment is each other, right? Where and I'm very much inspired by for example, anime conventions where it's a convention where everybody dresses up in costumes looking like their favorite anime characters, right? So the appeal of anime conventions is not just the vendors and the the voice actors who and the celebrities that you get to meet. That's one pillar, right? But the like one of the most important pillars for anime convention is where people dress up
Hmm.
and they take pictures and with one another and they host little costume contests, right? They are each other's entertainment, right?
Right.
So if we cannot raise a lot of money to afford a bunch of headliners because we're trying to keep this a free admission thing, then I thought, okay, that means we need to steer the festival towards where everybody is a participant, right?
Participant.
So that is, I think, kind of like where I'm trying to put on my thinking hat is like, how do we encourage that? How do we encourage more people to dress up and take pictures? So a couple of ideas were things like a fashion garden. So I'm
Hmm.
taking the idea of the pageant that we had in 2026 and I distilled it down to, well, why do people are into that? Well, they're into it because of fashion. Like
Fashion.
let's just be real, if they're into fashion. So
Right.
so why restrict it to just a handful of people dressing up? Why not open it up the door to the whole community?
Right. Yeah, so definitely an open invitation to be a part because they're part of the community, and so just embracing the culture with us. It's free admission at Elk Grove Park,
Mhm.
um, free to come together. And I think that's where like the impact is, right? Not just because this is going to be transcending past the lions, the heritage, the meeting the protectors and the lions and all these things, right? I
Yeah.
feel like we live in a world, we live in such a dystopian world, and it seems like, because I have teenagers, right? I have a 17-year-old, I have a 21-year-old, well, I have two adults and a teenager, and they, I wouldn't say they live on their phones, but um, it's almost a rare case if they don't have their phone on them, right? And so when we go to like family settings or even on a Sunday, that's like an intentional family day. We just put the things down as best we can, but to be able to put your device down and be in the moment, I think is something that a lot of our families don't get to have a lot. And so to have this interaction with the community where we invite them to be a part of, where we do appeal to the elder, where we do appeal to my generation and then younger generations and all these kiddos, even down to the toddlers, I think that we owe that to ourselves, to be able to come together device free, right? As much as possible. And you were talking about um, how the event was free, how this um, how there are a lot of Vietnamese community like festivals. um, for our community that might not know, what makes our festival different than those festivals in that sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so it's just like Christmas. You can't say that there's only one place to celebrate Christmas, right? And so it is expected that there are multiple places that celebrate Lunar New Year, both in the Chinese
Yeah.
community, Pan-Asian community,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the Vietnamese community. Just the Vietnamese community alone, you have celebrations at Buddhist temples, Catholic churches, Christian churches. So they all have their own celebrations as well, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the thing that makes us different is that we are a civic festival as opposed to a religious oriented festival. So there is it becomes a meeting ground for every religion. Um, or people who are spiritually aware and not necessarily following a religion. Either way, that's the benefit of being a civic uh institution. It's also a challenge though, I have to admit, because the festivals at the churches and temples, usually their community will support that event first before
Right.
they sponsor or donate to our festival. So that's something we have to be mindful of, is that there's limited resources. So trying to host too many events, competing against them is a challenge. But that's also why I think myself as an organizer, I think about, well, how can we leverage each other as strengths rather than as competition, right?
Right.
And so for the churches and the temples, their strength is traditional Vietnamese music, faith-based traditions where it's a marriage between Vietnamese culture and religion. So those are the things like I don't want to, compete against, right? That's their specialty, and definitely um like anyone who's interested in participating in those events should go to those events, right? So where does that leave the civic Lunar New Year? Well, that's everything else that isn't covered
Right.
by that, right? Um, there's non-Vietnamese community, non-Chinese communities, right? For them, it's about their curiosity about Lunar New Year and what it's all about, right? So I think there's a strength for us where of being multilingual or bilingual, just English accessible. So I think that's why in 2026 we really shifted hard on being English accessible, because we knew that we were not just trying to be just a Vietnamese event for Vietnamese people. We wanted this to be an event for the broader community in Elk Grove. Um, and so, uh, so being a civic event is one thing, but also um, there's also that because we're targeting the broader community, it starts to become inherently multicultural. And we kind of saw that with 2026, where we brought in the auto those car clubs, which is a staple of what Chicano culture, right? And then
Chicano culture. Yes, we did.
yeah, and then we invited the Polynesian dance group, and they gifted us with their performances. So so that's not something you typically find at a Vietnamese temple or Vietnamese church, right? So I think that's also another strength of ours, that we have the ability to tap into the broader community and you know have that space in order to play around with and interact. For example, there was that one food vendor, my lumpia lady, and the
Mm.
owner is Kathleen, and their theme is essentially marrying Filipino with Mexican cuisine, right?
Mexican
Kind
cuisine.
of fusing it together into, so they have like a
Yes.
lumpia with birria, right?
Area. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh no, that was so good. But
They are.
yeah, so that's an example of like where the space can allow for that kind of collaboration and cross-cultural synergy and play, right? Um, it is experimental and definitely something I'm trying to figure out and build that kind of culture, is how can we bring our heritage cultures, but also how can we explore collaborating with one another, right, to create something
Right.
unique, right? Because that's what I want. What I've started to see, and this is a fact, within the last 10 years, the number of multiracial, multi-ethnic Vietnamese went from 5% to 11%, right? It basically doubled, right? So there are families out there that are multi-ethnic, multiracial. There are kids that are multi-ethnic, right? And I want them to feel uh whole and celebrated. In fact, there was a comment I heard from a family. It was like mother was Vietnamese, father was Korean, and they had a
Hmm.
3-year-old son, and the son was really into his Korean heritage. But after our festival in, this earlier this year, they told me that he loved his Vietnamese side now. So, and I just thought, wow, that wouldn't that be first of all, I was like, that to me is this is why I do it, right? Just so that kids can feel excited about
Right.
who they are, right? But I think the other thing is that I really enjoy the thought that, this kid he's half Korean, half Vietnamese, and culturally American too. He's going to grow up in American culture. So how can we create a space for him growing up where he feels like every aspect of him is embraced, where he doesn't need to, tuck away
Right.
that Vietnamese side or like only show up his American side, right?
Yeah, and I think we show that, like, um, if I'm not mistaken, I'm the first um, Hispanic on Community Partner Advocate in Little Saigon, Sacramento, but Little Saigon, Sacramento was home to me. And so I really feel embraced by my personal, like, upbringing, or, yeah, the community that brought me up. And so I think that in terms of having that community partner in our name, you said something earlier. You said, we're not here to compete. We're here to elevate. We're here to be intentional about our partnerships, to help other organizations, to build those connections. But even deeper than that, I think that just like the story you shared, you remember the little girls that arrived from, I think, Ripon. They came from the Central Valley and they were waiting for the lions, and they had heard the stories of how the lions had warded off the bad spirits, but they had never seen it. And it was like we had the platform and the opportunity to present something so impactful and so meaningful to these little girls that they'll never forget, right? And a lot of the things that we heard in, like, the back chattering of going through the festival attendees, you heard a lot of people saying, hey, I wouldn't have known that if, or we had a girl that walked in our Aoyai portion of the parade, and she was Cambodian, Vietnamese, Hispanic, and she had the opportunity to celebrate her culture. She looked like me. She looked just like me, but I was able to um, receive her, and she was able to share her story. And our sister or organization, the Miss NorCal Vietnam, they included her in the snippet of the Lunar New Year intentions and blessing for the community that they put out. So I think just the forward motion of being intentional and mindful, and also transitioning, because we're not saying we're doing away with the old traditions. We're saying those are still there and they're highly honored, but there's also the passing of the torch, and there's these opportunities for the community to also be invested and understand. I mean, I don't know how many people know that most of these, uh, all of our events, that our community invested are all volunteer led, and that takes a lot of investment. So I think in terms of just, hearing your heart and seeing where your heart is taking you, and I think this is an open invitation for people to prepare for if there's a space for them to volunteer, if there's a space for them to, be a vendor or bring something into the community space that we're building. That would be helpful. But, just sharing with families that, we want kids to celebrate themselves, their heritage, and feel like they're a part of something. We live in such a crazy time.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely one thing I want to say about.
It's,
Sorry, your reception is kind of breaking up. But I was gonna say there's something I want to share about
yay,
not seeing other events as competition. Um, I've actually started reaching out to some of them, and the vision I was sharing with them was that what I want to do is build a season, not just one festival, but an entire season where there's different things going on everywhere, right? Basically, a Lunar New Year takeover of Greater Sacramento. Um, because if we want to get to a point where it becomes a destination of uh with like let's say 100,000 people celebrating, like everyone's involved. And so I I heard that there might be a new Lunar New Year at Sac State. Oh,
I went to go play with my internet.
okay. Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
I mean I'll
bottom
wrap up on
line
this
is,
final thought. So but yeah, so I heard there's gonna be a potentially a Lunar New Year at Sac State for the first time in that I know of. I'm in conversation with the Lunar New Year at District 56, hosted by California is My Home. And I'm just sharing with them, like, why don't we create a seasonal calendar? Because in San Francisco, they have the Chinese New Year festival and parade. And if you look at their calendar,
right.
it's they've it spans several weeks and they have different things going on. They have a what is it, a basketball jamboree, they have a flower market, they have the parade, they have a festival, they have the pageant, right? They have an entire calendar of things, right? And I'm just thinking, we do too. But every
Yeah.
festival and every event should kind of like focus on their strength, right? And I want them to elevate them and say, okay, if you into traditional Vietnamese music, go to the Vietnamese church or Catholic church's event, or go to the casinos. They have some, right? If you into sports, come to our
Right.
our Lunar New Year tailgate. Um, if you into I don't know. Like I think the Lunar New Year at the District 56, they told the CEO is Eva. Eva told me like the thing she cares about is
Eva. Okay.
traditional Chinese culture. So I noted that, and I'm just thinking, okay, if you into like traditional Chinese heritage and culture, like let's funnel people to that because I think their their heritage is really, really interesting and cool. Not only that, like it seems like they're gonna start earlier in terms of the season. Ours is gonna be later. So that means like Lunar New Year is gonna be several weeks. Yay.
Yeah, a whole month almost.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not even
Back to back.
including
And
Mardi
I agree.
Gras.
Like, we should, yeah. Mardi Gras. Oh, and a parade, right? Like the Golden Harvest Parade somewhere in that.
Yeah, well, Golden Harvest Parade
Yep,
is gonna
there's.
be in
Yep.
fall, but yeah. So I think that it's all about coordination. So I think 2026 made me opened up my eyes to, the Mardi Gras community. And while I still would like to work with them, um, it's it's a lot. It's like we're already trying to figure out how do we organize ourselves just within the Lunar New Year community. Um, I'm taking a step back, from the Mardi Gras community a bit to figure out, okay, how do we organize the many different things going on within the Lunar New Year side so that
Yeah.
it becomes a well-coordinated network. And then I'd like to bring the Mardi Gras element into it again. It's just so many players that I have to talk to. But I really want this to be a season, essentially, right? And there's many things that different things going on that appeals to different uh groups and or markets and target markets, like different age brackets, people looking for certain things, like maybe there's some people who into food, maybe there's some people into art and fashion, right? There's got to be something for everyone, right? And it's just a matter of where do we host it? Do we host it at Elk Grove Park? Do we host it at District 56? Do we host it at Vietnamese Martyrs Parish? Do we host it at um, a restaurant or a casino, right? It's just a matter of figuring out where everything should live. So that is like more long-term vision, but definitely 2027, like I'm happy to start making those reaching out to those other groups and just having that conversation because I still want, like, that's just my nature to lift up everybody, first of all. But also secondly is that my mentor challenged me, make this into 100,000 people um festival. And I thought, 100,000 people, that's crazy. But when I thought about it, like, we don't have to do 100,000 in one event. We could do 100,000 across multiple events over multiple weekends. So,
Right.
yeah.
And maybe that's the first point, because I think that in all things, even as we're evolving, we see growth. We have learning curves, we have learning opportunities, and we're like, okay, maybe we stepped into that too quick. Whether it was the fashion show, excuse me, the Mardi Gras or the car show, right? They weren't bad additions, right? But we didn't have the capacity yet, and it was good to be able to build those connections. It's my intention to continue to preserve them, right? So that when we do get to that space, that space will be able to float itself a little bit better with more coordination and more hands-on. But even in terms of Mardi Gras, those were really great learning opportunities. It's really, for me, history lesson, because I didn't know how intertwined. And through the process of 2026, I don't know how many times we exchanged, like, wow, did you know that this culture was intertwined with that culture, that music tied into this, or food tied into that. And here's the bottom line. And I think also with the intention that our mentor has for the 100K, that's totally possible, in the future, is like, at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We're all human, and we all love food and good times and music. And this is a perfect opportunity to be able to do that amongst the community, getting to know programs in the community, getting to know cPALSs, VACOS, and BCC, whoever else decides to hop on board to help us out or to be a part of that resource space. I think this is an awesome opportunity, a good start. Probably more conversations to have as we develop, right? So that the community knows what's coming. So they are building anticipated excitement with us, so that they know where we're at every step, from here to February, because it's going to go by fast. And the planning sessions already started, right?
Yep.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
we are.
I really love, that's one of my favorite parts too, is the that our board at present just really believes in intentional connections, intentional preservation, and like just growing together. There's no competition within even in the efforts of like community plannings and things like that. And I'm excited to see what 2027 brings as we're building to 2027. So maybe we should set up another conversation to share a little bit more like a sneak peek or a preview of what these little villages are looking like, or maybe we can start rallying up the community. And I know we have a lot of creatives in Sacramento, so maybe this is an unintentional intentional plug. Creatives, we need you. We need you for those villages, for just adding value and to making better connections with all of you so that we can showcase your art and we can showcase the beauty of your uniqueness within the cultivation of the festival plannings. But Bao, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm sure there's many more conversations to be had. Like definitely like I want you involved in bringing in the different nonprofit organizations and the resources. So you and I had definitely a lot of conversations about that, but in the interest of giving the audience a break to absorb all this first, we could set up another time, another conversation for that. But thank you for, hosting me and
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Thank you for being my mentor along the way and for carrying me under your wing while we're prepping this year. It was and has been a total joy. I think that in this next year, I'm just taking with me the learned lessons, right, so that we can find and get things done even better. And I think as long as we are aiming to be better than we were yesterday, we're on Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your heart. And I'm excited to talk to you soon.
all right, thanks, Ellie. Have a good day, everyone.